What would you do if you suddenly lost the one thing you need most? To do your job and live your life. For most of us, this would be the end of all our dreams. But have you ever thought that your greatest loss could actually be the key to your biggest success? How can someone who has lost everything create something that changes the world forever? The answer to this mystery is waiting for you at the very end of today's journey. In May 1824, the city of Vienna was the undisputed center of the musical world. The streets were filled with carriages heading toward the theater AMK. Inside the grand hall, the candles were lit, and the orchestra was tuning their instruments. However, the man at the center of the evening's program, Ludwig van Beethoven, was not experiencing the event through sound. For several years, Beethoven had been living with profound deafness. By the time he reached the age of 54, he could no longer hear the voices of people speaking to him, or the notes produced by the instruments. He had spent his life mastering. His living conditions in Vienna reflected this physical reality. Visitors to his apartment often described a scene of organized chaos. Scraps of music paper were strewn across tables and floors. In the center of the room sat several pianos, many of them with broken strings. From the force with which he had struck the keys in an attempt to hear a faint vibration, Beethoven had reached a point where traditional hearing aids, such as large ear trumpets, provided no assistance. To continue his work, he began to interact with his instruments in a strictly physical and tactile manner. One of the most documented actions he took during this period was the removal of the legs from his grand piano. By placing the instrument directly on the wooden floorboards, Beethoven transformed the entire room into a conductor of sound. He would lie flat on his chest, or press his jaw firmly against the wood of the floor. When he struck a key, the vibration traveled through the floor and into his bones. This method allowed him to perceive the frequency of each note through his skeletal structure. He began to map out melodies, not by how they sounded in the air, but by how they pulsed against his body. In this silent environment, he spent years composing the Ninth Symphony. This work was technically complex, introducing a full choir into a symphonic structure for the first time in history. He wrote the entire score by visualizing the mathematical relationship between notes on a page. He relied on his absolute memory of pitch and his understanding of harmonic theory to build a massive structure that lasted over an hour. He was not hearing the music in the room. He was calculating and feeling its physical weight. On the night of the premiere, May 7th, 1824, Beethoven stood on the conductor's podium. He wore a dark coat and held a baton, although an official conductor stood nearby to guide the performers. Beethoven followed his own internal score, waving his arms with great intensity. As the musicians played the final movement, the Ode to Joy, the hall was filled with sound that reached every corner of the gallery. Beethoven, however, was several bars behind the orchestra. He continued to conduct the music he had in his mind, unaware that the live performance had already moved past him. As the final chord was struck, the music stopped abruptly. The audience stood up in a massive, synchronized movement. They waved their hats, clapped their hands, and shouted in a display of approval. Beethoven, still facing the orchestra, did not move. He was still submerged in the silence of his own mind. He did not hear the thunderous applause, or the thousands of voices calling his name. It was only when a young soloist, Caroline Unger, walked over to the podium, took him by the sleeve, and gently turned him round, that he saw the physical evidence of the crowd's reaction. He looked out at the sea of movement, the waving hands and the open mouths, and finally realized that his work was complete. Beethoven's journey teaches us that our greatest obstacles are often the very conditions required for our greatest breakthroughs. Ludwig did not write the Ninth Symphony despite his deafness. He wrote it because of it. He had to lose the world to find the universe. My friend, what is the silence in your life right now? Do not be afraid of the quiet. Like Beethoven, press your ear to the floor of your current reality and feel the vibration of the life that is still waiting to be lived. Your masterpiece is not found in the easy path, but in the strength it takes to find a new way to sing, plant a new seed of wisdom for your soul. Every day, by subscribing to Seeds of Life together, we will grow stronger through these valuable lessons